what's up? How are... Oh. What the...
No, I got 12 kids. I need this.
Oh, yeah. Well, I just had a baby. I'll take one. Can I have one? Yeah. No, Diddy.
The moment Mariah Carey's name got attached to anything involving Diddy and Nick Cannon's baby headlines, the internet didn't gasp, it short-circuited. One whisper turned into a roar. And suddenly, timelines felt like someone cracked open a vault nobody was supposed to know existed. Not a rumor drifting by. Not a messy tweet. This felt like a leak wrapped in celebrity silence and served with a side of y'all really didn't think this would stay quiet forever, did you? What shook people wasn't just the idea of more babies or celebrity chaos. It was the implication. The suggestion that behind the jokes, the interviews, and the playful public persona, there might have been conversations nobody signed up to hear out loud. The kind that makes fans stop laughing and start rereading captions from years ago like they're decoding ancient scrolls. People joked to cope, saying this makes the Kardashians look like amateurs. Others compared it to a Netflix expose, where the truth doesn't explode, it leaks drop by drop until everyone's soaked. Memes tried to keep up, but the tone felt nervous. Because when Mariah Carey exposes anything, people assume she's not guessing, she's remembering. And here's the question that made this. It's impossible to scroll past. If there was never a deal, why does this sound like someone finally said what was always whispered? Because once a legend speaks, even indirectly, the internet listens differently. This didn't start with Mariah Carey trending. It started with whispers that never fully went away. For years, Nick Cannon's ever-growing family tree has been treated like a punchline. A meme, a running joke everyone pretends is harmless because it's wrapped in smiles and morning show energy. Diddy's name, meanwhile, has always floated nearby whenever conversations turn to power, influence, and how celebrity ecosystems really operate behind closed doors. Separate stories, separate reputations, until suddenly, they weren't. What snapped everything into focus was the implication tied to Mariah's name. Not a press conference, not a dramatic rant, just enough of a suggestion framed through context and memory to make people pause. And when someone with Mariah Carey's history, stature, and proximity to these circles even hints at something, the internet doesn't treat it like speculation. It treats it like a flashback. Finally unlocked, fans immediately started rewinding history. Old interviews resurfaced. Casual jokes Nick once made suddenly felt less playful. Comments that once sounded harmless now read like foreshadowing. The internet loves nothing more than retroactive clarity, especially when it feels like the truth was hiding in plain sight. The whole time, the idea of a baby deal didn't come from a single quote. It emerged from patterns, from timing, from how confidently Nick Cannon has spoken about expanding his family, and how comfortably those conversations have existed in spaces that usually flinch at responsibility. People started asking whether this was always framed as humor to distract from something more calculated. Diddy's presence in the conversation added fuel instantly. His reputation for influence, mentorship, and behind-the-scenes maneuvering made the theory feel heavier. Not proven, not confirmed, just plausible enough to make people uneasy. Online, plausibility is gasoline. You don't need proof to start a fire. You just need a spark that feels believable. Mariah Carey's connection to Nick is what made this story radioactive. This isn't a random commentator. This is someone who shared a life, a family, and years of private conversations with him. So when her name got tied to the phrase exposes, people didn't hear gossip. They heard context. They heard someone who might be speaking from experience rather than imagination. Reaction pages moved fast. Clips with dramatic captions spread like wildfire. Comment sections filled with people saying things like "this explains everything," and I always felt something was off. It's how narratives harden online. Once enough people feel validated, the story stops needing confirmation. Sarcasm exploded as a defense mechanism. People joked that Nick Cannon treats babies like collector's items. Others said Diddy mentoring him suddenly felt less wholesome and more strategic. Humor kept the conversation light on the surface, but underneath it all was discomfort. Because jokes are easier than confronting the idea that celebrity culture might normalize. Things most people would question immediately. Supporters rushed in to shut it down. They argued there's no such thing as a baby deal, that adults make personal choices, and that the internet was reaching for a scandal where there was none. They accused blogs of weaponizing Mariah's name for clicks and dragging her into something she never explicitly confirmed, but critics weren't backing off. They pointed out how carefully worded non-denials tend to be, how nobody actually addressed the core implication, only the phrasing. And in internet logic, dodging feels louder than denial. What made this moment different from past Nick Cannon baby discourse was the tone. This wasn't playful curiosity. It felt investigative. People weren't laughing as much. They were asking why this setup felt so organized, so normalized, so unchallenged in celebrity spaces that usually debate everything else to death. Old footage of Diddy speaking about legacy and lineage resurfaced. Not because it proved anything, but because it fit the mood. Quotes get repurposed when narratives shift. Context becomes elastic. And once a story starts aligning itself, every past statement feels intentional. Mariah's silence added another layer. Not because she owed anyone an explanation, but because silence after implication creates vacuum. And vacuums online get filled with theories at warp speed. Some said she was protecting her peace. Others said she'd already said enough. A few insisted her restraint made the implication even louder. Nick Cannon's public persona became a focal point. His confidence, his jokes, his calmness. People asked whether that ease came from choice or from a framework already accepted behind the scenes. Again, not evidence interpretation, but interpretation is currency online. The conversation quickly shifted from, "Is this true?" to, "Why does this sound believable?" That's the danger zone for any celebrity story. Once believability sets in, facts arrive late to their own party. Fans debated morality, responsibility, and power dynamics. Was this about consent and autonomy? Or about influence and normalization? Was it harmless lifestyle choice or a symptom of celebrity bubbles operating by different rules? These questions don't need answers to trend. They just need enough people asking them at the same time. The comparison machine kicked in hard. People said this made other celebrity family scandals look tame. Others joked it sounded like a reality show pitch that somehow escaped the writer's room and became real life. Exaggerated. Absolutely. Effective. Completely by the end of the first wave, the story had transformed. It wasn't about babies anymore. It was about control, image, and who gets to define what's normal when money and fame erase consequences. Mariah's name wasn't the headline, it was the credibility stamp people latched onto. Fairly or not, and the most uncomfortable part was this. Nobody could fully explain why this rumor felt so sticky. No smoking gun. No leaked contract. No confirmed quotes spelling it all out. Just vibes, history, and a silence that didn't rush to correct the record. That's all the internet needs to keep digging. Because once people believe a truth has been hidden behind jokes long enough, they stop asking if it's real, they start asking how long. Everyone's known once the conversation crossed from curiosity into conviction. The internet did what it always does next. It escalated. What started as whispers about Mariah Carey's implication turned into a full-blown cultural autopsy of Nick Cannon's lifestyle and Diddy's influence. Not because new facts dropped, but because people decided the pattern was enough to put the story on trial. Reaction channels went into overdrive. Every clip was dissected like it held a hidden message. Nick's past interviews got replayed with a new filter. Lines that once sounded jokey suddenly felt calculated. People said his confidence now read like someone speaking from a position of protection, not spontaneity. Online, tone becomes evidence when certainty takes over. Memes exploded first. Because humor is how the internet masks discomfort. Jokes about baby bundles, legacy programs, and subscription families flooded timelines. People laughed, but the laughter carried an edge. These weren't playful jabs anymore. They felt like satire aimed at something people were starting to take seriously. Diddy's name intensified everything. His long-standing reputation as a power broker made the speculation feel heavier. People weren't accusing, but they were suggesting. Suggesting mentorship blurred into influence. Influence blurred into normalization. Normalization blurred into the idea that certain lifestyles get quietly supported when power and money align. Old quotes resurfaced instantly. Diddy talking about legacy. Nick talking about building a strong lineage. Individually harmless. Together, the internet stitched them into a narrative like a conspiracy corkboard. Context got rearranged to fit the mood, and once the mood locked in, contradiction stopped. Mattering. Celebrity adjacent reactions poured gasoline on the fire without naming anyone directly. Cryptic posts about Hollywood being weird and truth hiding behind laughter went viral. Emojis did more damage than statements. A single side-eye story was enough to launch 1,000 think pieces. Silence became suspicious. Vague comments became confirmations by association. Mariah's restraint continued to haunt the narrative. She didn't clarify. She didn't expand. She didn't deny publicly. That quiet didn't read as indifference. It read as intention to many viewers. People said she said enough already. Others argued she was being dragged into something she never meant to fuel. Either way, her name remained the anchor. Nick Cannon's response strategy only added tension. .com/measured. Unbothered supporters said he owed nobody an explanation. Critics said the ease felt rehearsed. Online, calmness is a double-edged sword. If you're loud, you're guilty. If you're quiet, you're hiding. There's no winning posture once a narrative takes hold. The outrage phase hit next. Not explosive anger, but moral frustration. Comment sections turned philosophical. People debated responsibility versus autonomy, choice versus power imbalance, personal freedom versus cultural influence. This wasn't gossip anymore. It was a referendum on celebrity ethics disguised as entertainment. Pop culture comparisons went wild. People said this made reality TV families look structured. Others joked it sounded like a Silicon Valley startup pitch that accidentally went public. Hyperbole ruled because exaggeration is the internet's preferred language. When it doesn't have proof but has feelings, what really shifted the temperature was how many people said, "This actually explains a lot." That phrase popped up everywhere. It didn't explain facts, it explained discomfort people had been carrying without words. Once a rumor gives language to unease, it sticks like glue. Supporters pushed back hard. They called it misogynistic, judgmental, and invasive. They argued that framing consensual relationships as schemes says more about the audience than the celebrities involved. They accused reaction channels of moral panic disguised as investigation. Critics weren't backing down. They said consent doesn't cancel power dynamics, and visibility doesn't equal transparency. They argued that when influential figures normalize extreme lifestyles publicly, it invites scrutiny. Whether that scrutiny is fair or not became irrelevant. It was happening anyway. The algorithm loved the chaos. Threads titled "What We Know So Far" went viral despite knowing almost nothing. Voiceovers narrated speculation like breaking news. Reaction videos reacted to reactions. The story didn't need updates anymore. The discussion was the product. Even people who initially laughed it off started paying attention. Not because they believed the theory outright, but because it refused to die. When a story keeps resurfacing without new information, people assume something unresolved is underneath. The tone grew darker. Less jokes. More judgment. More concern. Less curiosity. More certainty. That's the moment narratives become dangerous, when belief replaces investigation. People stopped asking, "Is this true?" and started asking, "How did this go on so long?" Mariah's legacy got dragged into the conversation too, unfairly or not. People framed her as the voice of reason, the insider who finally let something slip. Others warned against using her reputation to validate unverified claims. But online, reputations get borrowed without permission all the time. The most unsettling shift was how the story stopped being about babies altogether. It became about systems, about celebrity ecosystems that operate by rules the public never sees, about how humor can normalize behavior until questioning it feels taboo. Whether those systems exist here is beside the point. People believed they could buy now. The narrative was self-sustaining. No one needed Mariah to speak again. No one needed Nick or Diddy to explain. The story had grown beyond individuals and turned into a symbol of everything people distrust about fame, power, and silence. And once a story reaches that stage, it's no longer about truth, it's about what people are ready to believe, which meant the final phase wasn't going to be louder, it was going to be colder, because when the internet decides it's done being entertained, it starts being judgmental. And that's when consequences begin to surface. When the noise finally cooled, the damage didn't vanish, it settled into shape. That's how modern scandals age. They don't end with a verdict. They end with a vibe. And the vibe around this story shifted from curiosity to quiet judgment, the kind that follows people long after timelines move on. Nick Cannon's image took the biggest hit. Not because of anything new, but because the conversation reframed everything old. Jokes that once landed as playful started sounding rehearsed. Confidence that once felt carefree suddenly felt insulated. Fair or unfair, perception changed. And perception is the currency celebrities actually live on. Diddy's name lingered in a different way. Not loud accusations, not direct claims, just implication. And implication is slippery. It doesn't need proof to stick. It only needs plausibility. His long-standing reputation as a power figure meant that even silence carried weight. When powerful people don't deny narratives quickly, the internet assumes they don't feel threatened by them. Mariah Carey's role became almost mythic. She wasn't treated like a participant or an accuser. She became a symbol, the insider who supposedly said just enough. That's a dangerous pedestal. Because once someone gets cast as the quiet truth holder, everything they don't say gets interpreted as confirmation. Supporters tried to pull the conversation back to reality. They reminded people that speculation isn't evidence that autonomy exists, and that celebrity lifestyles aren't morality plays. They weren't wrong. But by this point, logic had already lost the algorithm battle. Once narratives harden, corrections feel like interruptions. The most lasting consequence wasn't cancellation. It was reframing. Every future headline involving Nick's family choices now carries a subtext. Every interview clip gets rewatched with suspicion. Every joke gets evaluated for sincerity. That's the cost of unresolved narratives. They attach themselves to everything that follows. Online discourse grew colder, less laughing, more labeling. When the internet stops joking, it starts judging. And judgment doesn't announce itself. It just changes tone. Comment sections became harsher. Takes became definitive. Nuance disappeared under certainty. What made this saga stick was the absence of closure. No clear denial. No confirmation. No moment where everyone agreed to move on. Loose ends stayed loose, and the internet hates that. It keeps them bookmarked, ready to resurface whenever timing feels right behind the scenes. Reputational math quietly changed. Collaborations don't cancel over rumors, but they do hesitate. Brands don't run from controversy, they run from unpredictability. And nothing is more unpredictable than a story fueled by implication instead of facts. The algorithm eventually found a new obsession, as it always does. But this story didn't disappear. It archived itself, saved in people's minds as that thing we never got answers about. Those are the stories that come back strongest. Because memory fills gaps better than facts ever could. The uncomfortable truth is, this didn't need to be true to be effective. It only needed to be believable enough. And belief online doesn't require proof. It requires repetition. silence, and a few familiar names to anchor it. No one was convicted. No truth was confirmed. But something still shifted. Trust got thinner. Benefit of the doubt got rationed. And once that happens, relationship between celebrity and audience never quite resets. This wasn't an ending. It was a recalibration. Because the next time, Nick Cannon jokes about family, or Diddy talks legacy, or Mariah Carey reflects on the past, this story will hover quietly in the background. Not shouted, not proven, just remembered, and in the attention economy. Memory is louder than facts. If you made it this far, don't pretend this was just another celebrity headline. This one sat heavy. Not loud, not explosive, just uncomfortable enough to stick. And stories like this don't disappear, they wait. They linger in interviews, jokes, and silences that suddenly feel a little too polished. Now it's your turn. Drop your take in the comments and don't hedge it. Was this the internet reaching for drama where none exists? Or did Mariah's name crack open a truth people were already side-eyeing for years? Is this about personal choice or about power, influence, and what gets normalized when fame rewrites the rules? Say it straight, the comment section is where the real verdicts live. Smash that like button like it owes you money and try to dodge the call. Every like tells the algorithm you want the deep dives, the uncomfortable conversations, and the stories that don't come with clean explanations. Engagement keeps these breakdowns alive instead of buried under safe, recycled takes. If you're not subscribed yet, fix that immediately. While other channels chase headlines, we chase what's under them, the context, the timing, the silences that say more than statements ever could. Scandals don't come with warning labels, and neither do we. Turn on notifications too. That bell isn't decoration, it's insurance. Because when the next clip resurfaces, the next quote gets reinterpreted, or the next harmless joke suddenly hits different. You'll want to be early, not catching up through screenshots and secondhand opinions. Remember this, the internet never forgets patterns, and it never unasks questions once they've been planted. This story didn't end with answers. It ended with doubt, and doubt is loud. This is Secret Scoop, where the truth doesn't explode, it leaks. Where the truth doesn't explode, it leaks.